used to believe the worst sound in the world was my son's crying, until I heard silence beneath his toy truck, the soft whisper of paper against plastic. He's a sweet boy. I'll see him again, when you're not looking. 8 words that shattered my world like glass. As a single mother, I'd faced sleepless nights, a bitter divorce, and the constant battle to keep us afloat. But nothing prepared me for this. The moment when ordinary objects become weapons, when playground sand hides predators, when a child's innocent words, "the man said not to tell," freeze your blood. They say a mother's instinct is to protect. What they don't tell you is how that instinct transforms when the threat isn't just coming for your child, but has been watching you both all along. And maybe, just maybe, knows you better than you know yourself. I used to think I knew what fear was. The day I signed divorce papers, hands shaking like autumn leaves. The first night alone in this little 2-bedroom rental, listening to every creak and groan of settling wood. The morning I dropped Leo off for his first day of kindergarten, his tiny fingers slipping from mine. But true fear? That didn't find me until a Tuesday afternoon in October, when my 5-year-old son handed me a toy truck with a note taped to its underside. Before that moment, our life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. I'd carved out a decent living as a freelance graphic designer, working from our kitchen table while Leo was at school. We'd moved to this neighborhood 6 months ago, far enough from Nolan that I didn't have to worry about awkward run-ins at the grocery store, but close enough that he could maintain his weekend visitations with Leo without much hassle. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Simple. Safe. That Tuesday, I'd picked Leo up from school and taken him to Hillcrest Park like we did most afternoons. The autumn air carried that perfect crispness, not quite cold enough for gloves, but just enough to turn Leo's cheeks pink as he raced toward the playground. "Watch me, Mom," he called, scrambling up the ladder to the tallest slide. I smiled and gave him a thumbs up, settling onto a bench where I could keep him in sight while I checked my email. A client needed revisions on a logo design. Nothing urgent, but enough to keep my attention split for a few minutes. Leo was playing in the sand with his favorite yellow dump truck, methodically filling and emptying it while humming to himself. Such a serious little worker, my boy. While Nolan had always complained that Leo was too quiet, too sensitive, I treasured his thoughtfulness. The way he studied things with those deep brown eyes that missed nothing. My phone rang, my biggest client with a last-minute request. I answered, keeping my eyes on Leo while I talked through project details and deadlines. He was only 20 feet away, digging in the sand, perfectly safe in this quiet neighborhood park we visited almost daily. The call lasted maybe 10 minutes. When I hung up, Leo was putting his truck into his backpack, ready to go without me even having to call him. Always so intuitive. "Ready for a snack at home, buddy?" I asked, reaching for his hand. He nodded, slipping his small palm into mine. "Can we have apple slices with peanut butter?" "Absolutely." The walk home took less than 10 minutes, Leo chattering about the tower he'd built in the sandbox and how a squirrel had watched him from the fence. Nothing unusual. Nothing to suggest that while I'd been on that phone call, someone had approached my son. At home, I made Leo his snack while he settled at the coffee table with his toys. I was cutting apples when he called out, "Mommy, look at my truck." "That's nice, honey," I said absently, focusing on not slicing my finger. "No, you have to look under it. The man said you should." The knife froze in my hand. "What man, Leo?" "The man at the park." His voice was matter-of-fact, the way children are when they don't yet understand danger. I set down the knife and walked to the living room. Leo held up his yellow dump truck, the one he'd been playing with at the park. "He said to give this to you," Leo explained, turning the truck upside down. Taped to the bottom was a folded piece of paper. My fingers trembled as I peeled it off, unfolding what looked like ordinary printer paper. The message was typed in plain black text. "He's a sweet boy. I'll see him again, when you're not looking." The room tilted. My lungs seemed to freeze, unable to draw a breath. I looked at Leo, who was watching me with curious eyes, completely unaware of how our world had just been shattered. "Leo," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who gave you this? What did he look like?" Leo shrugged, already more interested in his truck again. "I don't know. He had gray shoes. And he smelled like the hospital when I hurt my arm. Antiseptic. Cologne. I couldn't tell what she meant. Did he say anything else to you? My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Leo looked up, his expression suddenly guarded. He said not to tell. But I wanted to tell you. Pride and terror washed through me in equal measure. My son had known to tell me, despite what this stranger had said. But someone had approached him, had handed him something while I sat just yards away, distracted by a phone call. I moved through the house in a blur, checking door locks, window latches, pulling blinds closed. All while my brain screamed, "Call the police. Call the police now." With shaking fingers, I dialed 911, keeping Leo within arm's reach the entire time. 911, what's your emergency? My voice caught. I started again. Someone approached my 5-year-old son at the park and attached a threatening note to his toy. I need police. Please. The dispatcher took my information, told me officers would be there soon. I hung up and immediately called Nolan, who answered on the 4th ring. What's up, Celia? He sounded distracted, probably at work. Someone threatened Leo, I said, the words burning my throat. At the park. Left a note saying they'd see him again, when I wasn't looking. Silence, then. Jesus Christ. Did you call the police? They're on their way. So am I. I hung up and pulled Leo onto my lap, holding him tight while we waited. He squirmed after a minute. Mommy, you're squishing me. Sorry, baby. I loosened my grip, but kept him close, breathing in the scent of his shampoo, trying to slow my racing heart. The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers took initial information, but said a detective would follow up. They'd barely left when Detective Amira Costa arrived, introducing herself with a firm handshake and clear, intelligent eyes that immediately put me at ease. She wasn't what I expected. Not the gruff, weathered detective from TV shows. She was professionally dressed in dark slacks and a blazer, her natural hair pulled back, her demeanor calm but focused. May I see the note? She asked after introductions. I handed her the paper, now sealed in a plastic bag by the first officers. And the toy. I gave her Leo's truck, which she examined carefully before placing it in an evidence bag. Mrs. Wren. Ms. I corrected automatically. I've gone back to my maiden name. Wren is my ex-husband's name. She nodded. Ms. Wren, I know this is frightening, but I need to ask Leo a few questions. Would that be all right? I hesitated, looking at my son, who was now drawing at the coffee table, seemingly untroubled. Can I stay with him? Of course. Detective Costa sat on the floor near Leo, but not too close. She spoke gently, asking him about the park, about his truck, about the man who'd given him the note. Leo answered in his typical thoughtful way, but couldn't provide much more than he'd already told me. The man had gray shoes. Smelled like a hospital. Wasn't scary. He had a hat, Leo added, drawing circles on his paper. And glasses, maybe? I don't remember his face good. Costa nodded, jotting notes. You're doing great, Leo. Did the man touch you at all? Leo shook his head. No. He just gave me the paper for my truck and said it was a secret game for Mommy. My blood ran cold. The front door opened, and Nolan burst in without knocking. He was still in his work clothes, tie askew, hair rumpled like he'd been running his hands through it. Where's Leo? Is he okay? His eyes fell on Detective Costa. What's happening? Have you found who did this?
Costa stood smoothly, introducing herself.
Mr. Wren, I presume?
Yes.
Nolan Wren. He crossed to Leo, kneeling beside him. Hey, buddy. You okay? Leo nodded, unperturbed. I'm drawing a dinosaur. Nolan looked at me, then at Costa. So, what's being done? Who's this sick bastard approaching my son? We're investigating, Mr. Wren, Costa said calmly. The note will be processed for prints, and we'll review any security cameras in the area. In the meantime, I recommend heightened vigilance. No unsupervised outside time for Leo, even in your yard. Nolan turned to me, anger flashing in his eyes. You were supposed to be watching him. I was, I said, defensive heat rising in my cheeks. He was right in front of me. Clearly not, or some creep wouldn't have been able to walk up and… Mr. Wren, Costa interrupted smoothly. This type of predator specifically waits for moments of brief distraction. They're opportunistic. Ms. Wren did exactly right by contacting us immediately. Nolan deflated slightly, but I could see the accusation lingering in his eyes. It was the same look he'd given me throughout our marriage whenever anything went wrong. Your fault. Always your fault. After Costa left with the evidence and a promise to increase patrols in our neighborhood, Nolan insisted on staying for dinner, though it wasn't his scheduled day with Leo. I didn't argue. Despite our issues, I knew he loved Leo fiercely. And truthfully, I didn't want to be alone. We ate takeout pizza, watching Leo carefully, searching for signs of trauma that weren't evident. He seemed fine, the resilience of children both a blessing and a curse. He didn't understand the danger, couldn't grasp why the friendly man at the park had left his mother white-faced and trembling. "I'll sleep on the couch," Nolan announced after we put Leo to bed. "Just for tonight." I nodded, too exhausted to argue. "Thank you." I barely slept, listening for any sound, any indication of an intruder. When I did drift off, it was into uneasy dreams filled with faceless men and children's toys lined up like tombstones. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. I bolted upright, heart racing, then realized they were too light to be an adult's.
Lei.
I found him standing in the hallway, eyes open but vacant.
Sleepwalking.
He'd never done this before. "Leo," I whispered, gently taking his shoulders. "Honey, wake up." His eyes remained unfocused, but his lips moved. The man was in my room. My blood turned to ice. I gathered him into my arms and carried him to my bed, where I lay awake until dawn, watching him sleep, wondering who was watching us. That night changed everything. Leo's innocent words about the man in his room shattered what little sense of security I had left. By morning, I was running on adrenaline and fear, making plans before Nolan had even woken on the couch. "I'm installing cameras," I told him over coffee, my voice leaving no room for debate. "Front door, back door, Leo's room, hallway." Nolan, bleary-eyed but alert, nodded. "I'll cover it." "What else?" "Motion sensor, lights outside. New deadbolts. Window alarms." He watched me over his mug. "Celia, do you think this is someone targeting you specifically? Not just some random predator?" The question had haunted me all night. The note had been so personal, so deliberate. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm not taking chances." After Nolan left for work, promising to return that evening, I called my clients to explain I needed a few days off. Then I took Leo to school, speaking with his teacher and the principal about security procedures. No one was to pick him up except me or Nolan. No exceptions. By afternoon, I'd ordered an entire security system online for next-day delivery and was screwing in a new deadbolt when my neighbor Tilda Crane appeared at my side door, carrying a plate of cookies. Tilda was a fixture in the neighborhood, a widow in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair always pulled into a messy bun. She had the sharp eyes of someone who noticed everything and the weathered hands of someone who'd worked hard all her life. "Heard the commotion yesterday," she said without preamble. "Thought you might need these." She thrust the plate toward me. Peanut butter chocolate chip. The good stuff, not that store-bought garbage. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "Would you like to come in?" Tilda stepped inside, her eyes sweeping the room assessingly. "Where's your boy?"
School.
I almost kept him home, but normal routine is important, she finished, nodding. "Smart." She settled at my kitchen table without invitation, clearly planning to stay a while.
"So."
Someone left a note. I hesitated, but Tilda's direct gaze made lies feel pointless. I told her what had happened, watching her face grow increasingly grave. "I've seen a car," she said after I finished. "Parked too long across from your house last week."
Dark sedan.
Couldn't make out the driver. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my coffee mug. "Did you tell the police?" "Didn't think much of it then. Will now." She fixed me with a steady look. "You check your mail today?" No, why? Just a feeling. She stood. Check it. And Celia? Don't dismiss anything strange, no matter how small. After Tilda left, I went to my mailbox with a sense of dread. Among the usual bills and flyers was a plain white envelope with no return address. No postmark either, hand-delivered. Inside was a photograph of Leo at the park. Not from yesterday, but from last week. He was on the swings, laughing. I was visible in the background, my back turned as I talked on my phone. Someone had been watching us. For how long? I called Detective Costa immediately. She arrived within the hour, bagging the envelope and photo, her expression carefully controlled but her eyes blazing with intensity. This escalates things, she said. Random opportunistic predators don't usually conduct surveillance beforehand. So this is targeted, I said, the words hollow in my chest. It appears so. She hesitated. Ms. Wren, I have to ask, is there anyone who might want to harm you or your son? An angry client? Someone from your past? My thoughts went immediately to Nolan. Our divorce had been bitter, his infidelity exposed, his attempts to paint me as unstable when I confronted him. But would he go this far? Target his own son? I don't know, I said honestly. My ex-husband and I didn't part on good terms, but this seems extreme even for him.
Costa nariz.
We'll look into everyone. In the meantime, document everything unusual, no matter how insignificant it seems. After she left, I picked Leo up from school, holding his hand too tightly as we walked home. That evening, Nolan arrived as promised, helping install the security system that had been rush-delivered. We need to talk, I said after Leo was in bed. Someone left a photo in my mailbox. Of Leo. They've been watching us. Nolan's face drained of color.
Jesus, Célia.
Detective Costa asked if anyone would want to hurt us. I watched his reaction carefully. If anyone had a grudge. His eyes narrowed. You think I'd do this? To my own son? I don't know what to think anymore. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache despite everything. Someone sent me a message, too, about a month ago. He pulled out his phone, showing me a text from an unknown number. You don't deserve your family. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. I thought it was just a wrong number. Or maybe one of your friends being petty about the divorce. He paced the kitchen. I never thought it was this. I believed him. As manipulative as Nolan could be, his love for Leo was genuine. The fear in his eyes now was real. Stay here again tonight, I said. Please. The next morning, I asked Leo to draw what he remembered about the man from the park. He sat at the kitchen table with his crayons, brow furrowed in concentration. When he finished, he pushed the paper toward me. It showed a stick figure with no facial features except 2 dark circles for eyes. The figure wore what looked like a hat, and Leo had colored the feet gray. That's all I remember, Mommy, he said, already reaching for a new sheet to draw something else. I showed the drawing to Costa when she came by to check our new security measures. She studied it with a frown. Children's drawings can be tricky to interpret, she said. But the lack of facial features is interesting. Either Leo truly doesn't remember or what? Or the man was deliberately concealing his features. Hat pulled low, perhaps sunglasses, mask of some kind. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home, the small blue house in Vermont where I'd grown up. In the dream, I was both adult and child, wandering the familiar hallways that somehow stretched and distorted like in a funhouse mirror. At the end of the hall was the closet door in my old bedroom, now padlocked. From inside came scratching sounds, like nails on wood. I woke gasping, tangled in my sheets. The digital clock read 2:44 a.m. Down the hall, Leo's nightlight cast a soft glow under his door. I crept to his room and peered in. He was asleep, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. The next day, Costa called, asking to meet. We sat at a coffee shop while Leo was at school, Nolan keeping watch outside the building. We'd agreed one of us would always have eyes on him now. I need to tell you something, Costa said, stirring her untouched coffee. This case, it's personal for me. I waited, watching her carefully controlled expression. My sister was taken when she was 7. I was 9. Her voice remained professional, but her eyes held old pain. We were at a county fair. I was supposed to be watching her while our parents were in line for food. I got distracted by a game. When I turned around, she was gone. I'm so sorry, I whispered. They never found her. Costa's fingers tightened around her mug. That's why I became a detective. And why I believe this case connects to something bigger. What do you mean? She pulled out her tablet, showing me a police report. 2 months ago, another child found a note on their shoe at Westlake Park. Similar wording. The parents didn't report it until days later, thinking it was a prank. Cold spread through my chest. Was the child taken?
No.
But the family moved away shortly after. She swiped to another screen. We're looking into similar incidents in neighboring counties. When I got home, Leo was napping at Tilda's house next door. She'd offered to watch him while I met with Costa, and with our new security protocols in place, I'd agreed. I used the quiet moment to check our new security camera footage, relieved to find nothing unusual, until I stepped onto the front porch and found Leo's yellow dump truck sitting squarely in front of the door. The truck I'd watched Detective Costa bag as evidence days ago. With trembling hands, I called Costa, then Nolan. While waiting for them, I reviewed the security footage again, this time going back further. What I saw made my heart stop. At exactly 2:44 a.m., the time I'd woken from my nightmare, a figure stood at Leo's bedroom window. They wore dark clothing and a hat pulled low, their face never turning toward the camera. After 30 seconds of stillness, they placed something on the windowsill and walked away. When Costa arrived, she confirmed the worst. The evidence locker had been broken into. Leo's truck was gone. Someone had not only been watching us, they'd been inside the police station. The morning after finding Leo's truck on our porch, Detective Costa arrived with 2 other officers and a forensics technician. They dusted for prints, checked window locks, and removed what looked like a small electronic device from Leo's windowsill, the object the figure had left behind. It's a listening device, Costa confirmed, her voice tight with anger. Crude, but functional. I felt violated all over again. This person hadn't just been watching us, they'd been listening to our most private moments. To Leo's bedtime stories and midnight mumbles. To my phone calls with Nolan about our security measures. Costa handed me the evidence bag containing the note from Leo's truck. Look at this closely. Do you see anything unusual? I studied the paper, noticing for the first time a faint watermark, a crescent moon inside what appeared to be an eye. What is this? I asked. We're not sure yet, Costa admitted. But I've seen it before on another case. She hesitated. Ms. Wren, I think it's time we dig deeper into your background. And your family's. My family? What could they have to do with this? Predators like this often have connections to their victims, sometimes going back years. While Costa made calls from her car, Tilda appeared at my back door, her face unusually grave. She clutched a mug of tea that steamed in the cool morning air. Need to talk to you, she said, eyes darting to the police cars in my driveway. Alone. I glanced at Leo, who was watching cartoons under the watchful eye of a young officer. It's about the notes, Tilda continued, lowering her voice. And the symbol. A chill ran through me. How do you know about the symbol? Because I've seen it before. My niece, Becca. 12 years ago. Her voice cracked slightly. She disappeared. Left a note with that same marking. Moon in an eye. I invited her in, my mind racing. What happened to your niece? They said she ran away. 17, troubled home life. Tilda's mouth twisted bitterly. I never believed it. Becca wouldn't leave without saying goodbye to me. Did you tell Detective Costa this? Not yet. Wanted to tell you first. She set down her mug. There's more. The man they suspected. He worked at the hospital. Orderly. That antiseptic smell your boy mentioned. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly weak. Did they ever find him?
No.
Case went cold. She leaned forward, but I kept digging. Found mentions of similar cases going back decades. Children approached. Notes left. Sometimes they'd disappear, sometimes not. Why wouldn't he take all the children he approached? I whispered, horrified even as I asked. Don't know. Maybe he's selecting. Testing. Her eyes met mine. Or maybe someone stops him sometimes. That night, after the police left and Nolan took Leo to his apartment, deemed safer for now with its doorman and security system, I fell into an exhausted sleep plagued by vivid dreams. I was back in my childhood home, standing before that locked closet door. In the dream, I had a key clutched in my fist. As I approached the door, I noticed deep gouges in the wood, claw marks, as if something had tried desperately to get out. The key slid into the lock with a cold click. As I turned it, a voice whispered from inside, "You forgot about me." I woke drenched in sweat, the memory of the dreams so vivid it felt real. Something about that closet nagged at me. A half-remembered childhood fear I couldn't quite place. The next day, Costa arrived with a troubled expression. "We need to talk about Nolan Wren." My stomach dropped. What about him? His background check turned up something. She placed a document on the table. A restraining order filed against him during college. By an ex-girlfriend. I stared at the paper, numb. He never told me. The girlfriend claimed harassment after their breakup. Following her, leaving notes.
Costa watched me carefully.
Sound familiar? You think Nolan is behind this? The idea seemed both impossible and terrifyingly plausible. What about the symbol? The connection to Tilda's niece? We're exploring all angles. Costa's phone buzzed. She checked it, frowning. I need to take this. Excuse me. While she stepped outside, I called Nolan. No answer. My heart raced as I tried again. Finally, on the third attempt, "Celia? What's wrong? Where's Leo?" I demanded. "At school. I dropped him off an hour ago." He paused. "What's happened? Why didn't you tell me about the restraining order in college?" Silence stretched between us. Finally, "How did you find out about that?" That's your response? Not an explanation? He sighed heavily. It was a misunderstanding. Melissa and I broke up. It was messy. She overreacted to a few texts. By getting legal protection from you? It was dismissed, Celia. You can check the records. His voice hardened. Is this really what we should be focusing on right now? When someone is threatening our son? Before I could respond, I heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, I saw Costa sprinting toward my house. I have to go, I told Nolan. Check on Leo. Please. I hung up as Costa burst through the door. We found another note, she said breathlessly. Under your windshield wiper. The note was in the same plain typed font. You should have kept looking under the bed. Under the bed. My dream about the closet in my childhood home flashed through my mind. I need to go somewhere, I said suddenly. To my mother's house in Vermont.
Costa frowned. Now?
With everything happening. It's connected. I don't know how, but it is. I grabbed my keys. Leo is with Nolan. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm coming with you, Costa said firmly. This could be what he wants, to separate you from Leo. I hadn't spoken to my mother in over 2 years, not since she'd criticized my parenting at Leo's 3rd birthday party. Our relationship had always been strained. She was critical, distant, more concerned with appearances than emotional connection. The drive to Vermont took 4 hours, Costa following in her own car. My childhood home looked smaller than I remembered, a blue 2-story colonial that had once seemed like a mansion to my child's eyes. My mother answered the door with undisguised surprise. Celia, what are you doing here? At 70, Eleanor Porter remained intimidatingly put together, hair perfectly dyed chestnut brown, makeup precisely applied, clothing expensive and tasteful. I need to see my old room, I said without preamble. She blinked, taken aback by my directness. Whatever for? It's important, Mom. Please. She stepped aside reluctantly, eyes widening at the sight of Costa behind me. Who's this? Detective Amira Costa. She introduced herself smoothly. Just accompanying Ms. Wren on personal business. My old bedroom remained largely unchanged, the same lavender walls, the same white furniture. But the closet door, which in my dream had been gouged with claw marks, was now covered with a bookshelf. "When did you move this?" I asked my mother. She shrugged. "Years ago. You weren't using the room anymore." "Help me move it," I told Costa. Together, we shifted the bookcase. Behind it, the closet door stood intact. No claw marks, but something even more disturbing, a heavy padlock. "Why is this locked?" I demanded. My mother's face had gone pale. "Storage. Just old things." "Open it. Celia, this is ridiculous." "Open it, Mom."
Now.
With trembling hands, she retrieved a key from her bedroom. The lock clicked open, and Costa pulled the door wide. Inside, the small closet was lined with drawings. Children's drawings, pinned to every surface. And among them, unmistakably, were pictures drawn by Leo from when he was a toddler, drawings I'd never seen before. "How did you get these?" I whispered, turning to my mother. "Leo has never been here." Before she could answer, Costa gasped, pointing to a newspaper clipping pinned among the drawings. The headline read, "Local man questioned in child luring case, 1995. The grainy photo showed a young man being led into a police station. And in the corner of the clipping was a handwritten symbol, a crescent moon inside an eye. "Mom," I said, my voice barely audible. "What is this?" My mother sank onto my childhood bed, suddenly looking every one of her 70 years. "I was trying to protect you," she whispered. "All these years." When I returned home the next evening, exhausted and reeling from what I'd learned, Tilda was waiting on my porch. She handed me a newspaper clipping from 1995. "Found this in my research," she said. "Thought you should see it." The article detailed a man who'd targeted single mothers, using children's toys to gain access to families. The man had never been caught. As I read, my security system chimed. Motion detected inside the house. Costa and I rushed in, finding no intruder. Instead, we discovered Leo hiding under the kitchen table, trembling. "He told me to hide again," Leo whispered when I gathered him into my arms. "Who did, baby?" I asked, heart pounding. "Who told you to hide?" But Leo just buried his face against my shoulder, refusing to say more. That night, after Costa had gone and Leo was finally asleep, I went to check on him one last time. As I approached his bed, something on his pillow caught my eye, a small porcelain doll with a painted smile. A doll I recognized instantly. It had belonged to me as a child. The same doll I had buried in the backyard of my childhood home, in the grave of my childhood dog. The doll no one alive should have known about. I couldn't sleep after finding the doll. How could I, when someone had placed my childhood toy, a toy I'd buried with my dog Rusty when I was 7, next to my sleeping son? It was impossible. No one could have known about that doll. Not even my mother. By morning, Leo was clingy and quiet, refusing to let me out of his sight. I called his school to say he wouldn't be coming in, then contacted Nolan, who arrived within the hour. "What the hell is going on, Celia?" he demanded when I showed him the doll. "First the truck reappears, now this?" Before I could answer, Detective Costa called. Her voice was tight with urgency. "I need to see you immediately. I'm bringing files. Don't discuss anything on the phone." 30 minutes later, Costa spread documents across my kitchen table while Nolan kept Leo occupied in the living room. The papers showed police reports, photographs, and maps spanning 2 decades. "I connected the cases," Costa said, her eyes bloodshot from what was clearly an all-night investigation. 4 unsolved incidents over 20 years. All with the same pattern: notes, symbols, children approached. She tapped a map where red pins marked locations. "And all victims lived within 5 miles of places you've lived, Celia." The room seemed to tilt. "That's not possible." "The first was in Berkshire County, 2003. You were living with your mother in Vermont, just across the state line. The second in Albany, 2008. You were attending college there. Then Rochester, 2015, where you moved after marrying Nolan. And now here." I sank into a chair. "You think I'm connected to these cases?" That I'm somehow involved. Not deliberately, Costa clarified. But I think whoever is doing this has been following you for a very long time. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Who would have tracked my movements for decades? Who would have known about the doll? There's something else, Costa said quietly. The symbol, the crescent moon inside an eye. It's associated with a fringe group called the Hollowing Eye. A cult. More like a pseudoscientific collective obsessed with memory and innocence. They believed children could be conditioned to transfer innocence through memory. Their writings are largely incoherent, but they were investigated in the 90s for child endangerment. A chill ran through me. Do you think they're behind this? Costa hesitated. The group supposedly disbanded years ago, but their symbol keeps appearing. Leo padded into the kitchen then, clutching his dinosaur toy. Mommy, I'm hungry. As I made him a sandwich, he looked up suddenly. The man said, he knows your name, before it was Ren. The knife I was holding clattered to the counter. What man, Leo? When did he tell you this? Leo's eyes widened at my reaction. The man in my dream last night. He said he knew you before you were a bird.
Ren.
A bird. My maiden name, Porter. The name I'd gone back to after divorcing Nolan. But Leo didn't know that. I'd never told him my maiden name. Costa and I exchanged glances. Leo, she said gently, what else did the man in your dream say? Leo shrugged, already losing interest. I don't remember. He was nice though. Said he's been looking for me for a long time. That afternoon, while Nolan took Leo to his apartment with strict instructions not to let him out of sight, Costa and I researched the Hollowing Eye online. The group had been founded by a psychology professor named Marcus Webb, who'd been discredited after publishing papers on inherited memory and innocence transference. He believed that childhood trauma created specific memory patterns that could be extracted and studied, Costa explained, scrolling through old news articles. His methods were considered unethical, and he lost his university position in 1991. What happened to him? Disappeared. Some sources say he died in a house fire in 1997, but the body was never conclusively identified. We were so engrossed in our research that the knock at my front door made us both jump. It was Tilda, her usually composed face flushed with excitement. Found something, she said, thrusting a flash drive at me. Encrypted files from an old forum. Took me all night to crack it. Acosta plugged the drive into her laptop. The files contained dozens of audio recordings labeled only with initials and dates. She clicked on one. A child's voice filled the room, crying softly, then whispering indecipherable words. The next recording was similar. A different child, the same pattern of crying followed by whispers. We listened to several, each more disturbing than the last, until we reached one labeled LW. Leo's initials. Costa clicked play. The recording began with the usual crying, but when the whispering started, the words were clear. Leo, run. My blood froze. That's my voice. But it wasn't possible. I'd never recorded such a message. Never whispered those words. Costa's phone rang, breaking the terrible silence that had fallen. She answered, her expression growing increasingly alarmed. When, she demanded. How many officers are? Yes, I'm on my way. She hung up, already gathering her things. Tilda Crane is missing. A neighbor saw someone forcing her into a car an hour ago. Oh God, I whispered. Stay here. Lock the doors. I'll send an officer to watch the house. After she left, I called Nolan, frantic to check on Leo. We're fine, he assured me. Playing video games. Doors locked, security system on. Nolan, Tilda's been taken. The person behind all this. Jesus, he breathed. Celia, I need to tell you something. A man approached me last month. Said he was investigating you. My heart stuttered.
What?
Why didn't you mention this before? He showed credentials. Said he was a private investigator looking into allegations that you were unstable, potentially harmful to Leo. Nolan's voice dropped. I told him nothing, but he knew things, Celia. About our marriage, about Leo's birth. What did he look like? Average height. Wore glasses, a hat. I never got a clear look at his face, The sun was behind him, just as Leo had described. Gray shoes, glasses, a hat. Nolan, don't let Leo out of your sight. Not for a second. I hung up and immediately dialed Costa, but the call went to voicemail. As I lowered the phone, it rang in my hand, unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello. Nothing but silence, then a distorted voice. You should have died. Not your brother. The line went dead. Brother? I didn't have a brother. I was an only child. Always had been. Hadn't I? The dream of the locked closet flashed through my mind. The claw marks on the door. The voice from inside. You forgot about me. I called my mother, hands shaking so badly I could hardly hold the phone. Celia, she answered, sounding wary. What now? Did I have a brother? The question burst from me, desperate and raw. Silence stretched between us, so long I thought she'd hung up. Then a shuddering breath. How did you find out? The room spun around me. It's true. A twin, she whispered. You had a twin brother. Silas. What happened to him? Where is he? He drowned. When you were 5. Her voice cracked. In the lake behind our house. You were there. You saw it happen. The trauma you forgot. The doctors said it was best not to remind you. But something in her voice rang false. The same tone she'd used when telling me the closet was just storage. You're lying, I said, sudden certainty flooding me. What really happened to Silas? More silence then. I can't do this over the phone. Come back to Vermont. Tonight. Before I could respond, there was a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw Costa, her expression grim. I let her in. We found Tilda's car abandoned by the highway, she said without preamble. No sign of her. I think I know who's behind this, I said, the words tumbling out. My twin brother, Silas. My mother just confirmed he existed, but claims he drowned when we were 5. I think she's lying. Costa's eyes widened. A twin? This changes everything. I told her about the phone call, the distorted voice claiming I should have died instead of my brother. We need to talk to your mother, Costa agreed. And we need to get Leo somewhere safe until we figure this out. That evening, Costa arranged for a police officer to stay with Nolan and Leo while we drove back to Vermont. The entire trip, my mind churned with fractured memories, flashes of a boy who looked like me, playing by a lake. A hand slipping from mine. Screaming, water splashing. Then nothing. My mother was waiting when we arrived, her face haggard. Sit down, she said, nodding to Costa. Both of you. We settled in her immaculate living room, the air heavy with unspoken truths. I didn't lie about having twins, she began, hands twisting in her lap. You and Silas were born 7 minutes apart. Identical, except for a small birthmark on his left shoulder. What happened to him? I demanded. There was no drowning. That was the story we created. She took a deep breath. When you were 5, I had a breakdown. Your father had left us. I was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping. One night, I couldn't stop crying. Couldn't function. A doctor came, a colleague of your father's. He suggested a residential facility for me. Said the children would be cared for. Children. Plural. She nodded. But when I was released 3 months later, they told me Silas had been transferred to a special home. That he'd shown signs of disturbing behavior. Hurting animals. Setting small fires. And you believe them? Costa interjected. I didn't want to, my mother whispered. But they showed me reports. Evaluations. They said he'd be better off in specialized care and that you'd be traumatized if you remembered. So you let them take him, I said, my voice hollow. And you lied to me my entire life. Tears slid down her lined face. I thought I was protecting you. They said contact would trigger psychosis in both of you. Who are they? Costa pressed. What was the name of this facility? The Hollowing Light Children's Home. Run by Dr. Marcus Webb. By morning, Costa had obtained records from the now-defunct Hollowing Light Children's Home. The facility had been shut down in 1998 after allegations of experimental treatments and child endangerment, but no charges were ever filed due to lack of evidence. Silas Porter was admitted in 1993, Costa confirmed, scanning documents on her laptop. Transferred to foster care when the home closed, then vanishes from the system at age 16. He'd be my age now, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. 33. There's more, Costa said grimly. The symbol, the crescent moon in an eye, it was the logo of the children's home. And Dr. Webb's research specifically focused on identical twins. He believed they shared a memory channel that could be accessed and manipulated. I thought of the recordings we'd heard. Children crying, whispering. My own voice telling Leo to run. Was my voice faked? In that recording? Costa shook her head. Unlikely. The technology wasn't sophisticated enough back then. But you were 5 when Silas was taken. They could have recorded you as part of their research. My phone rang. Nolan. Celia, we have a problem, he said, his voice tight. A man contacted me again. Says he has information about you and Leo. Don't meet him, I said sharply. It's a trap. I already did, Nolan admitted. Last night, while you were driving to Vermont. He showed me photos, Celia, of you as a child. With another child, identical to you. My heart raced. What did he want? Information about Leo. His routine, his habits. Nolan's voice broke. I think I've made a terrible mistake. What did you tell him? Nothing important, I swear. But he knew things. Said his name was Simon Porter. Claimed to be your cousin, investigating your family history. Silas. Not Simon. My twin. Nolan listened to me very carefully. That man is dangerous. Take Leo and go to your parents' house upstate. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even me. I'll contact you when it's safe. After hanging up, I turned to Costa. We need to find Silas now, before he gets to Leo. We spent the day tracking down every lead on the hollowing light and Dr. Webb. Birth records confirmed Silas and I were identical twins, a rarity for boy/girl twins, explained by a genetic anomaly called monozygotic twins with differential sexual development. By evening, we discovered Dr. Webb hadn't died in that house fire after all. He'd been living under an assumed name until his actual death 3 years ago. And among his possessions, authorities had found hundreds of recordings, photographs, and files on the children from his care home. He believed he could extract traumatic memories from one twin and transfer them to another. Costa explained as we drove back to my house. It was pseudoscience, but he apparently convinced others, including some parents. My father, I said. He was a psychology professor too. They were colleagues. We were almost home when Costa received a call. Her face paled as she listened. When? She demanded. Any signs of forced entry? She hung up, hands gripping the wheel tightly. The officer watching your house found something in your backyard. A sealed cellar door, hidden under your garden shed. That's impossible, I said. There's no cellar. But there was. When we arrived, crime scene technicians were already processing the small underground room access through a trapdoor beneath my garden shed, a shed that had been there when I moved in. The cellar contained a table, a chair, and walls covered with children's drawings. In one corner, a box held small toys, and what looked disturbingly like small animal bones. He's been watching you since you moved in, Costa said. Hiding right under your home. My phone rang again, Nolan's ringtone. Are you at your parents' house? I asked immediately. Change of plans, Nolan said, his voice strangely flat. We're at the cabin. The cabin. Nolan's family owned a hunting cabin in the Adirondacks. We'd visited once, years ago. Why there? That wasn't the plan. He said it would be safer. Nolan's voice dropped to a whisper. Celia, he has a gun. He says he just wants to talk to you about what they did to both of you. My blood ran cold. Put him on the phone. A moment of silence, then a new voice, similar to mine in pitch, but harder, with a slight rasp. Hello, sister. My throat tightened. Silas. You remember me. He sounded pleased. I wasn't sure you would. Let them go. Please. They have nothing to do with what happened to us. That's where you're wrong. His voice hardened. Your son has everything to do with this. He's pure enough to reset the past. What does that mean? What do you want? I want you to come alone. To remember what they did to us. What they took from you and gave to me. A pause. GPS coordinates are being texted to you now. You have 3 hours. The line went dead. Costa immediately called for backup, but the nearest tactical team was hours away. The cabin was deep in the mountains, accessible only by a narrow dirt road. I have to go alone, I said, already grabbing my keys. Absolutely not, Costa protested. This man is dangerous, Celia. He's been planning this for years. He's my brother, and he has my son. In the end, we compromised. Costa would follow 30 minutes behind me, coordinating with local authorities. I would go in first, trying to keep Silas talking until help arrived. The drive to the cabin was a blur of mountain roads and desperate prayers. As I approached the final turn, my headlights illuminated a figure standing in the road, Tilda. I slammed on the brakes, stunned. She was disheveled but appeared unharmed. He let me go, she said as I rolled down my window. Said I'd delivered my message. That I wasn't needed anymore. Where's Leo? And Nolan? Inside. The man, Silas, he's not what you think. Her eyes were wide, almost feverish. He saved me years ago. From the same people who took him from you. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're not alone. Deal's off. He knew. Somehow, he knew Costa was coming. I have to go, I said, throwing the car into gear. Get to safety. I floored the accelerator, taking the final curve too fast, gravel spraying as I skidded to a stop before the small wooden cabin. A single light burned in the window. Inside, I found Nolan tied to a chair, a bruise darkening his left cheek. Leo was nowhere in sight. Where is he? I demanded, rushing to untie Nolan. Where's Leo? Back room. Nolan gasped as I freed him. Celia, he's insane. He thinks Leo is some kind of vessel for his memories. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned to find myself staring at myself. Or rather, the male version of me, Silas. The same eyes, the same mouth, like looking in a funhouse mirror that changed only your gender. Hello, Celia, he said softly. I've waited so long to see you again. For a moment, neither of us moved. It was like staring at a photograph negative of myself, familiar yet distorted, recognizable yet wrong. Where's Leo? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Silas gestured toward a closed door. Sleeping. Peacefully. I'd never hurt him. Let me see him. He nodded, stepping aside to let me pass. I opened the door slowly, hardened my throat. Leo lay on a small cot, curled around his dinosaur toy, breathing evenly. Relief flooded me so powerfully my knees nearly buckled. When I returned to the main room, Silas had untied Nolan completely. You can go, he told my ex-husband. I only needed you to bring the boy. Nolan looked at me, uncertainty in his eyes. I'm not leaving without Leo and Celia. Your choice, Silas shrugged. But what happens next isn't for you. I studied my twin as he moved around the cabin, lighting an oil lamp as darkness fell outside. He moved with a deliberate grace, his gestures controlled and precise. No wasted motion. Nothing like my own nervous energy. Why are you doing this? I asked. Why now, after all these years? Silas settled into a chair, regarding me thoughtfully. Because it's time for you to know the truth. About what they did to us. What they took from you and gave to me. The hollowing light. Dr. Webb. He nodded. They separated us because we were perfect subjects. Identical twins with the genetic anomaly that made one male, one female. They believed they could extract traumatic memories from one twin and transfer them to another. That's not possible, Nolan interjected. Silas turned cold eyes to him. Isn't it? Asks Celia about her dreams. About the locked closet. The scratches on the door. Ask her why she buried her doll with her dog when she was 7. A chill ran through me. How do you know about that? Because it wasn't your memory, Silas said softly. It was mine. I was locked in that closet as punishment. I scratched until my fingers bled. I killed your dog, Rusty, because he bit me. And you, perfect, protected Celia, buried your doll with him in an act of childhood grief. No, I whispered. That's not true. I remember. You remember what they wanted you to remember, he cut in. While they fed me your nightmares, your fears. The parts of childhood they wanted to extract from you. Outside, I heard the distant sound of vehicles approaching. Costa and her backup. I needed to keep him talking. So, you created the Watcher persona? Left those notes. He nodded. I needed to show you the lies. How vulnerable you really are. How easily someone could take everything from you, just like they took me.
And Tilda?
The other missing children? I never took any children. His eyes flashed with genuine anger. I saved them. From homes like the Hollowing Light. From people like Webb and our father. Our father? The word felt strange on my tongue. He funded Webb's research. Offered us as subjects when Mother had her breakdown. Silas leaned forward. He's still alive, Celia. Living in Arizona under a new name. The vehicles were getting closer now. Silas cocked his head, listening. Your police friends are almost here, he said calmly. So, I'll make this quick. He pulled 2 keys from his pocket. 2 keys. One unlocks the shed behind this cabin, where Leo is actually sleeping. That was just a doll on the cot. The other unlocks a storage unit in Rochester with all of Webb's research. Every recording, every file, including what they did to us. He placed both keys on the table. You can only take one. The other will be gone forever. You're lying, I said. Leo is in that room. I saw him.
Did you?
Or did you see what you expected to see? A mother's desperate hope. Doubt crept in. I hadn't touched Leo, hadn't checked closely in my relief. Time's running out, Silas said as headlights swept across the windows. Your son, or the truth. Choose. Without hesitation, I grabbed the key he'd indicated was for the shed. Leo is all that matters. Silas smiled, a sad, knowing smile. I knew you'd choose him, just like Mother chose you. The door burst open, Costa leading a team of officers with weapons drawn. Police. Hands up. But Silas was already moving, darting through a back door. 2 officers pursued him into the darkness. I ran outside to the shed, hands shaking as I tried the key. It worked. Inside, Leo was indeed sleeping on a cot, just as I'd seen in the cabin, or thought I'd seen. Mommy, he mumbled as I gathered him into my arms. I'm here, baby. You're safe now. Over the next few hours, the cabin became a crime scene. Silas had vanished into the forest, though officers found an abandoned car a mile away, containing dozens of files and recordings. He'd left the evidence despite my choice. He wanted you to have both, Costa said as we watched the sunrise from the cabin porch, Leo asleep against my shoulder. The boy and the truth. Among the files was a tape labeled AC. Amanda Costa, Detective Costa's missing sister. She's alive, Costa said, voice breaking. According to these records, she was adopted by a family in Oregon after being taken from the care home. Silas included her current address. In the following days, more revelations emerged. The tapes contained evidence of over 17 children who'd been part of Webb's experiments. Most were alive, their whereabouts noted in Silas's meticulous records. Tilda was found at her home, shaken but unharmed. She admitted to knowing Silas for years. He'd saved her niece Becca from a care home similar to the Hollowing Light, and she'd been helping him track down other victims since. He never meant to hurt Leo, she told me. He just needed you to understand what was taken from both of you. 6 months later, Leo sat across from a kind-faced therapist, drawing pictures of his experience. His nightmares had gradually subsided, replaced by typical childhood dreams of dinosaurs and superheroes. I don't dream about him anymore, Leo told me one night as I tucked him in. The man with your face. That's good, I said, smoothing his hair. He wasn't bad, Mommy. He was just lost. Silas remained at large, though occasional postcards arrived from different cities. No words, just the crescent moon and I symbol, now transformed in my mind from something sinister to something sad. A symbol of twisted good intentions and separation. Costa was reunited with her sister, building a tentative relationship after decades apart. She remained determined to bring my father and the remaining members of Webb's network to justice. As for me, I'd found an uneasy peace. The locked doors in my mind had been opened, memories both mine and not mine now acknowledged. I understood now how fragile the boundary between self and other could be, especially for twins separated and used as experiments. I thought often of Silas, my other self, carrying the burden of memories that should have been shared between us. The darkness that should have been halved, not concentrated in one child while the other was protected. One evening, as autumn leaves fell again outside our new home hundreds of miles from the old one, I sat writing in my journal. Not about fear this time, but about understanding. About healing. I thought the worst thing that could happen was losing my son, I wrote. I never imagined it would lead to finding myself, my whole self, including the parts I'd been made to forget. The brother who was both stranger and self. The past that belonged to both of us. I closed the journal, listening to Leo's soft breathing from his bedroom. Safe. Whole. And finally so was I. What would you do if your greatest fear and your deepest truth turned out to be the same person? If this story kept you on edge, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more psychological thrillers that explore the darkness hiding in plain sight.